So all this data was taken, and it was published in a 900-page book called Diet, Lifestyle, and Mortality in China. And this is a really hard book to find, I know, because I looked for a long time to find it. And it's basically just page after page after page of numbers. Correlations between all the variables. Numbers, numbers, numbers. Scrolls of them. If you like numbers, it's beautiful. If you hate math, it is terrifying. So a lot of people ask me, for those of you who don't know yet, I did a lengthy critique of this particular book and the study. And for some reason, my, I guess, purpose of doing this critique is often shrouded in mystery or suspicion, because people ask me all the time if I'm funded by the meat industry or the dairy industry, or if I even exist, and I don't even know. I really don't know how that would work, but I thought I would just tell you really quickly, also get my water. I thought I'd tell you really quickly just my own intention for this. And I am a recovered vegan/vegetarian. Thank you. It was a long, grueling process. And for those of you who've never heard any of my background, I was actually a vegetarian for 10 years. I started when I was 7 years old. And I gave up meat at that point in my life, and my parents thought it was a phase. I guess it was a phase, but it lasted a long time. And by the time I was in my early teens, I had gone to veganism, and then by the time I was about 14, 15, I was a raw vegan. And does anyone know what raw veganism is? I was living on fruits and vegetables, and I was so entrenched in this dogma that I thought my diet was the healthiest thing they could possibly be eating, because fruits and vegetables are so healthy, right? So why not just eat fruits and vegetables? So here I was, 16 years old. All of a sudden, my health was falling apart, and the breaking moment for me came actually when I was 17 and in the dentist office for my yearly cleanup. And I should mention that I'm the kind of person who, when I was little, at sleepovers, I would be the kid laying wide awake, like unable to sleep because I hadn't brushed my teeth, because I would feel so bad. Like all the other kids would be passed out in a sugar coma, and I would like sneak out into the hallway to floss in secrecy, because that's how dedicated I was to my dental health. So I hadn't had almost any problems for my entire life. I had taken great care of my teeth. Here I was, 17 years old, back in the dentist chair, waiting for my glowing report. And all of a sudden, the dentist started making comments and noises that you really don't want to hear from a dentist, like, ooh, oh. So I was getting really worried. And by the end of the dentist visit, I found out I had 16 cavities. And that's a ballpark figure, because there were so many cavities, they were growing on top of each other. They were just, and at 17, so it's at that point that I realized I really needed to make some changes. So I started investigating just nutrition in general, and I ended up coming across Weston A. Price material. Heard some clapping. We have some Weston A. Price fans. Yeah, great stuff. I really owe them a tremendous amount. So at that point, I ended up transitioning back to an omnivorous diet, and I restored my health. So that's my quick story right there, and that's kind of why I was interested in vegan subjects and things like the China study to begin with, because I have a very long history in that community. And so when I came across this book, it really didn't fit with my experience as a vegan or my understanding of human history and physiology, which obviously includes a lot of animal product consumption, because we have never been vegans. It just doesn't make sense to me that would be our optimal diet. So I was a little suspicious of the book the first time I read it, but that's not when I actually critiqued it, because this was back in, I think, 2006. And eventually I decided I wanted to see for myself whether the claims in the book were actually legitimate. I wanted to see if the things that were being said here and that people were throwing over my head as, this is why veganism is the best, I wanted to see if that was true. And because I'm curious like that. So I also wanted to just win at the internet, because I used to have this issue where I would like to invite unnecessary aggravation into my life, and I would do that by hanging out on vegan message boards and getting in debates with people about why veganism wasn't optimal. So there came a point where I just got so sick of people using this book as the last word. They were just like, whatever I'd say, they'd say, well, just read the China study, because that makes you wrong. And so this kind of sums up how I was feeling for a while. And there was a particular message board that I used to hang out on that I will not name names, but it promotes a very large consumption of bananas. Some of you might know what I'm talking about. And I was getting into some big fights on that site. I mean, just debates on that site with a particular person, and he was very set in his ways about this China study being true. So it was at that point where I decided to track down this book and go over the data myself. I had, due to life circumstances, which I won't go into at the moment, I had some extra time. I had some insurance money from a car accident I was in. So I was like, well, I'm going to take a few months, and I'm just going to be a nerd, and I'm going to look at all these numbers in this giant book, and I'm going to see what they say, because that sounded fun to me. Are we? That's okay. So I got this book. Again, I spent 2 to 3 months daily just poring over the numbers, bookmarking it, dog-earing, typing things out on my computer, running some statistical analysis on it. And what I found was none of the claims in the book seemed to match the data. And there was such a stark difference between what the raw data said and what the book said the data said that I was just stunned. And I was like, I have to do something about this. I have to put this online for people to read. At the time, I had this little blog called Raw Food SOS, which I still have. And I had originally started it to help raw vegans recover their health because I didn't think they were getting the right information from their community. So I posted this on the internet, a long critique of everything I'd found about the book that I found to be wrong. And at the time, I expected maybe a couple people to read it, because my blog had a readership of maybe 5 people a day, and I think 4 of those were my mother on different computers. So I was going to be really excited if more than that read anything on my blog. So I posted it online, and indeed, it got viral. It went viral on the internet almost overnight. Thanks to the help of a lot of different paleo bloggers and low-carb bloggers, it was dispersed over the internet, and my blog went from about 5 to 10 views a day to 20,000 overnight in one night. And eventually the author, Colin Campbell, caught wind of my critique, and he apparently slapped me down on vegsource.com, as you can see. And if you've ever been to VegSource, you'll understand that it's a very pro-vegan site. So we got in a little online debate for a while, and I ended up writing a couple more kind of reviews and critiques of his work. And I think eventually he decided it was just more fun to hang out on Amazon.com review threads than talk to me. So he kind of disappeared. And so that's the brief history of how I did this and how I came to be on this stage today. So, water. So one of the things I noticed as I was analyzing this data and comparing it to what Campbell was saying was that Campbell repeatedly made the claim in his book that animal products were like just almost well, not perfectly, but the direction of the data was pointing that animal foods were correlated with diseases, Western diseases like heart disease, cancer, diabetes. And from reading the book, the impression I took was that the data was generally all pointing in this direction, and that it was something that was clear-cut, like the animal products were clearly linked to disease. So what I discovered was that Campbell was actually doing something kind of sneaky. He was saying that, okay, in the data we have higher cholesterol is associated with Western diseases, which it can be confounded by a lot of things, but there was a slight trend towards this. It wasn't perfect at all. And then on top of this, he was saying, well, animal protein in the data is associated with higher cholesterol. And so in the book, he was saying, therefore, animal protein must be correlated with Western diseases because we have this chain of variables. But when I looked in the data, the animal protein was not associated with any disease. The people who were eating more animal protein were not getting sicker. There was something else confounding the cholesterol connection there that made it look to Campbell like there was a link there. But if people who are eating more animal protein weren't the ones getting more disease, how can you say that they are? So this was the first thing that really baffled me, and it's one thing that I wrote a lot about on my critique.